Hey, you like cars? I'm back again. Now, you notice this is not my usual setting. It's not my usual space. I'm in a family member's office. You see the nice paintings, got a little accoutrements in the background, not my usual cars and things. But like I said, another traveling pod. I've been in the streets when it comes to the United States of America. I've been traveling around. So, podcast is late, but you know what? It doesn't matter. We're driving right in. There is a plethora of information to talk about. Not like new news, but there's just a lot of things that happen within Monterey Car Week, news in general with different cars that are coming out, CEOs speaking about things. So let me just drive right in and just, give y'all a little something. I know you've been lacking from the CarQuicks episodes. So we're back again. This is episode 63, CarQuicks podcast. I don't got my clapper, but let's drive in. Let's just dive right into it because I don't got time to waste. I got things to do. The first thing I want to talk about is, I'll be perfectly frank, I don't think this is like the most exciting news even for me myself, but I wanted to just kind of joke around about something in particular. So the 2025 Lincoln Navigator got announced. Now, if you have been around, you know good and well the Navigator has been a staple in the big American luxury SUV space. It has been the one that if you made it, if you got it like that, you ran the Navigators, especially when them things first dropped in like 98. I've seen them in plenty of music videos. People were in Navigators. So the 2025 one gets announced. It is big, it's boxy, it's much cleaner on the outside. It follows the design language of the Aviator and the Nautilus, right? So smoothed out edges, not as sharp as the Escalade. Escalade, I think, looks a little bit better. But let's be frank here. We're talking about big boxes. We're talking about bricks on wheels. These things are huge. So nobody's jumping in there like, yo, this thing looks one of the quintessential design studies. Okay, so the Navigator's out, 3.5 liter V6, 440 horsepower, 510 foot-pounds of torque, 6,000 pound weight, 10 speed automatic, 8,700 pound towing capacity. This is the normal going rate for like luxury SUVs. I mean, you want them big, they can tow, they're comfortable. Nobody's trying to get in them and say they want something that's lightweight or easy to drive. They want something that is, big and they can hold people. So the design keeps it clean. 22 to 24 inch wheels, satin aluminum. I have noticed a trend though. The lack of chrome on the outside is going away, which is fine. I'm not mad at that. The lack of chrome is something that is kind of needed. So satin aluminum is the new look now. We're getting rid of the chrome, which I'm not mad at. I mean, chrome was kind of one of those things where it's like it just got old as time went on. So satin aluminum trim, you get pretty much everything blacked out, grill, the trim, the headlights. The front end looks good. I mean, as far as big SUVs goes, it looks good. The rear tailgate has a split design now. You have the top part that can lift up, the bottom part can split. Smart design, okay? The split tailgates need to be applied to multiple other SUVs and even minivans, okay? There are times you just want to kind of throw something in the rear window, rear hatch part as opposed to opening up the whole trunk. There is a funny thing though. They said that the rear tailgate will automatically open as a driver approaches the rear. Like it will detect the key. I don't know. I know there must be like a 3 to 5 second delay here because if this thing was opening up every time you press the rear of this SUV, folks would be up in arms. Okay, that would make no sense. Interior is really the talking point here, and something in particular. Seven-seater layout, 28 speaker Revel sound system, 14 USB ports. That might be more USB ports than I have in my own house, including my chargers and the laptops. 14. There is an 11-inch center display. Okay, center display is 11 inches, controls the entire system. But here's where we're back battling for the biggest screen you can put in an SUV. There is a 48-inch panoramic display. 48 inches of panoramic display. This is absolutely crazy. 48 inches is across the front of this dashboard. Now, mind you, the Escalade has 55 inches. And I thought that was already crazy. Now, this isn't any bigger. So granted, while it is a lot, we're not getting larger. I know somebody's going to try to stretch 60 inches into this because that's just what it's going to be. But 48 inches on the front of it. The Blue Cruise is available. Same luxury SUV, you got captain's chairs, you got vented, heated, cooling seats, you got probably massaging option inside of it. The interior looks clean, especially with this, clear, very light color they have on there. Probably not white, but not necessarily gray, but somewhere in between. And I hope you really love Navigators because the base price is somewhere just below 100,000. Now, I've said it and I've said it time and time again. I don't know how often we are selling $100,000 SUVs, but they are common. Okay. Very much so. And so, there is no regular base model on this new Navigator. We have either the Reserve or the Black Label. So, to give you some context, the outgoing Navigator and the Reserve option trim is $97,960. You need ample Breadicus, okay, to afford one of these SUVs. And like I said, you really got to like these Navigators. This world, this American luxury SUV thing is, I don't knock it because it delivers exactly what you're asking for. Think of chauffeur services, limo services, large families, somebody that maybe commutes a lot or takes long drives. If you're inside of an Escalator or Navigator, these things silence the road. They're comfortable because you're sitting up high. You have great visibility. They have all the luxury features you can ask for, and they can go a long distance. They have enough power you can tow. So it's not going to look sleek. No, it's not going to have all these cool design elements on the outside. They're big, they're boxy, they're brutish, they're in your face, but that is really the design and the ethos of the Navigator and the Escalade. Big grills, big lights, big size. I mean, if we started crunching this down and trying to make it more sleek, Cadillac is trying something like that with the Escalade IQ, with the Escalade Q, the electric version, which kind of has a sloped rear. But the bread and butter, where it's made, where I'm sure Ford and Lincoln is making the most money, is on Navigators. Maybe Aviators as well too, but especially with Escalade, they make their money there. So the Navigator's coming out 2025. You see it, big, bold. The 48-inch panoramic display is clearly becoming a thing, and these are large SUVs because they got all the space, and it's crazy. But moving along, right? I'm not gonna spend too much time on Navigators and Escalades, but we're going to move on to like EVs real quick because somebody said something that I've talked about numerous times. And I'm not saying I'm some, prophesier in when it comes to the EV market and what OEMs and manufacturers do and what the EV market is going to do moving forward. But I have spoken to a couple things that have basically shown themselves. So at Monterey Car Week, that was happening last week, Honda's CEO, president of the American Honda division, said that the weakening of EV adoption, the sales, even though I'll get back to that because you'll see articles talking about EV sales have been increasing some percentage over each percentage. But what he was talking about is that this adoption that they need, the ability for people, let's say in the Midwest or other areas in the United States, to get EVs is lacking because of the EV infrastructure. And I've said it time and time again. When you can go and charge at speed, like you can go get gas at a reasonable amount of time, is when you will see more people bring in this idea of EVs coming into their life. Now, like I've said, they have a place. I'm not against EVs. I think they're going to be awesome. The future comes along, especially when we get to newer battery technology and you got this much longer range. But until you can just go somewhere and know that as you're driving, when you're driving on a road trip, you know that at some point in time, you're going to see a sign that says gas, food, hotel, gas, food, motel. You're always going to see something about gas because we live in a developed country where you can get it from East Coast to the West Coast. But if you have an EV, now I know people are going to say, well, how many times you doing a road trip? It's not that big of a deal. In town and where you live, there may be a charging station or you may have one in your house where it makes this very a mute point. But adoption across the country involves not just what I can do in my privileged neighborhood or my ability to have a charging station in my house. It is actually talking to the people that may live further out, who may rent, who may have not the ability to put a charging port in their house, the ability to just go out and charge it and be done and move on with their day. So he said that the adoption is weakening because the infrastructure needs to build up, that it's not going to happen, but it's going to be a slow tick up, meaning as more people do get them, the adoption and the infrastructure will get built up and adoption will come. The incentives and the lease prices kind of show you that truth, because lease prices are dumb low right now. Incentives are high, but EV prices on the used market are dropping in an astronomical rate. Depreciation on EVs is disgusting. Like, if you're buying an EV, I would highly recommend you just lease one. Buying one outright, whatever happens at the end of that 5 year, 6 year, seven, who knows? They're up to 10 years now, I heard. Whatever happens at the end of it, that car is going to be worth basically nothing. You're not passing it on because, one, you have to find somebody that is willing to be in that same market, in that same ability to charge the car, to want to go and get that EV. So if you don't have that, it's much easier to sell a gas powered car because everybody has gas leasing. They know how they work. They have mechanics. They have friends and family that work on cars. It's much easier to adopt certain things. But if you're talking about an EV, you have to then find that niche person. You got to find that group of people that want something like that. So what Honda's talking about is not unknown. It's why Toyota has been slow walking hybrids into EVs. It's why Ford themselves said we're no longer making a 7-passenger EV. Ford also announced that the second generation Lightning has gotten the axe. Who knows what that means for the current generation? But all these OEMs are shifting their EV expectations and their ambitions. They're going to hybrids. Toyota's doubling down on more gasoline engines. Many times, this has happened more than once. Okay, this isn't like a unknown thing that we're talking about. It's something that's been talked about many times. So again, another OEM is coming to the reality check of like, hey, we're not about to just drop all these EVs on the market and they're going to sell. We're going to need to convince, improve, and show the compatibility of these EVs in people's lives. So that's something happening, right? That was at the Monterey Car Week. Now, also, I almost knocked this camera over. Speaking of EVs, one of them that I do want to talk about, I might spend a little bit more time on this because I spoke about this car at the Houston Auto Show. When I was at the Houston Auto Show, when I was reviewing the cars there with the press event, I talked about the 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz, which obviously it pays homage to the old Volkswagen minibus. I said I loved how it looked. It's funky, it's quirky. There definitely needs to be more cars that are funky and quirky in the market. Everything doesn't have to be egg on wheels, box on wheels. There needs to be more things that are kind of unique, that may be very niche and maybe not mass adoption. And the ID Buzz is one of those cars. When I saw it from Volkswagen, I'm not mad at being electric. Of course, there are going to be people that say they could have just dropped a gasoline engine in there or something from the GTI or some other 1.4 liter turbo car engine they had, or maybe even a turbo diesel from the European market, but I digress. So the pricing for this came out, right? And so I was on Instagram and I kind of commented under a person I follow, Redline Reviews. I love their videos and their channel. And I said, I don't even know who they're targeting. Like, this price point that they have set for this Volkswagen, as you can see in the picture, if you look at the video, this little ID Buzz, little minivan-esque, small little compact little thing, holds 7 passengers and stuff. Iconic design. We know where it came from if you've been following Volkswagen. Starts at $61,495 with a 234-mile range. I just want to know who it's for. Like, who is it for? I can tell you who I think it's for. I think it's for maybe my parents, boomers, people that were born in, the 50s, that had, in the 60s, that had Volkswagen buses, that have the means to buy now, that may not have kids in the house anymore, that have a higher available income to spend on something fun. An electric version of it makes sense because they could say, less work, we're just going to beat around the neighborhood in the streets, take a little road trip to the beach. In California, I can see it perfectly fitting inside them small little beach communities. In Florida, in the South, and even in the Northeast, I can see where this can fit in. But I know Volkswagen isn't just making this car to just grab the few, niche group of people and make it a success. I would imagine they want to sell multiple of these, right? Including the fact that if you add the all-wheel drive to it in areas like the Northeast or the Midwest, or people say, I would like something that doesn't get lost in the sea of random gray and white SUVs, maybe something that has a splash of color, that looks funky, that has a quirky design, that pays homage to an era when people would argue car design took more risk. So I can see them wanting this car. Can see them wanting this van. I can see family saying, you know what, I have a Toyota Sienna. This was out, and let's just say it was an EV one. Let's say it was a gas one. The EV option of it wouldn't work for our family because of the road trips that we take. But let's just say it was an option there. I would have considered it. I'd have been like, hey, I've always loved them old Volkswagen buses. I would like to see what it's like to possibly own one. So I said, this price tag is nuts, right? I was like, this is just crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. Why are we charging $62,000? Why does everything have to be this high? It's not necessary. This should have started if a Toyota Sienna starts at 38,000. And granted, most people are going to say most Siennas and Odysseys are in the $50,000 range. I have an XSE model. I understand that reasoning, but that is not the ultimate truth. That's for the people that can have the means to do it. The majority of people walking into the store saying, hey, it starts at 37, 38. I'm interested in seeing. And if I add some options to it, at least I have that option. But if the van started at $60,000, I wouldn't have stepped in there at all. I just said, no, what am I going to do? What's the next? 70? I'm not paying that much money. So even though it comes well equipped, as the gentleman over at the Redline review said, he mentioned to me, said, well, it does come well equipped. And I said, I do agree with that. So some of the equipment you get on the Pro S, which is a standard model, you get Fox leather, Fox wood, which, I mean, what'd you expect? Honestly, you weren't about to get no real leather. It's Volkswagen. You already know. 9-speaker audio system, 3-zone climate, keyless entry, heated first and second row seats, digital gauge cluster, heated side mirrors, massaging front seats. That's actually, all right. Hey, I'm going to give it to them for that one. 12-inch center display, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all wireless. 20-inch wheels, center console called the Buzz Box, which is removable. Now, I'm gonna throw into something. An old Sienna from like early 2000s, the center console in the front could be removed out. It was a very cool feature when you needed to bring in something that was really long, like 2x4s, or you go to IKEA and buy a long table. You could take out the center console and you could fit the whole table in. How do I know? Because I did the same thing on that old Sienna we had. So that's a cool feature. So that is well equipped. But I also think that we've gotten too callous to manufacturers and OEMs showing these prices on these cars and us trying to find a means to justify how much it costs. I do think that that's where things should change. $61,495 for a Volkswagen ID Buzz, which is a smaller minivan, basically. Sits 7 passengers. A 235-mile range should not be starting at 60,000. I don't care how it's equipped. I will stand on that idea and that opinion that this is overpriced. This should start around mid 40s. And if you got to take away massaging front seats, then take it away. If you got to take away a 12-inch center display, then take it away and put in a 9-inch one. If you got to take away heated second row captain seats, then take it away. Because the people that are buying this, I'll tell you what I would rather have had. If you would have told me that there's a version that costs $45,000 but doesn't have Fox leather but has cloth and a cool plaid design that goes back to that retro era, I would rather have cloth. I don't need fake leather. I don't need Fox wood trim. You could have just made it aluminum. You could have made it piano black, and I hate piano black, but I'm just saying for the sake of the price point, we didn't have to add certain things. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is a standard feature. I mean, you can't take that away and hope for people to not be like, come on, at the bare minimum. That's basic interior technology now, right? That's not something that's like, ooh, guess what? You got the wireless CarPlay in your car. Now you're moving on up now. But this could have easily not have started at near $62,000, especially if you're saying what comes well equipped as features that I would argue the people that are going to be looking at this or who could say, I can do away with heated side mirrors, front massaging seats, heated second row seats, 20-inch wheels. You could have gave me 18s. You could have gave me 17-inch Steelies. We could have really took it back. And I would have been like, you know what? I like what y'all doing here. I'm going to take those. We ain't need 20s. And they're probably heavier and causing the range to go down. Obviously, the body and everything around it, design wise, they probably put the 20s. But, anyways, what I'm saying is it don't just stop there. Let's say you want a 14 speaker Harman Kardon sound system. You want a heads up display. You want a panoramic roof. You want those captain's chairs. You can get all the way up to $71,545 on the limited first edition models. You can't tell me that that is not egregious. 72,000 for a minivan? I mean, who's buying this? Now, there is a Sienna Platinum, 60,000. I would argue that is more car and more capability than a ID Buzz with 234-mile range or 231 if you get all-wheel drive. I would argue that you can put more people in those cars comfortably than the 7-passenger in this van, so to speak. So there are reasons why some of the other options, while they may match the price when you get to the upper reaches of it, like a Sienna Platinum or Odyssey Elite, they pack so much inside of it that most would argue, well, that makes more sense than this particular smaller, fun, unique car. I do hope it does do well, though, because I don't want Volkswagen to see bad sales, take it away, and say this is why we never bring anything back like this. Now, if they wanted to really just knock it out the park and make all the sales in the world, it would have been gas powered. Now, I know that goes against people saying pushing forward the industry and pushing forward the idea of electric vehicles. I understand that. That makes sense, but there's a happy medium. Now, Volkswagen, from what I remember, what I've read, aren't really known for the hybrid systems, but if they wanted to just knock this well out the park, they would have made sure that, hey, we want to hit the mid 40s, whatever it takes to get there. Cloth seats all around. They could have did a wraparound bench in the rear. That would have really sold this thing like immediately. Now, safety features and all that might not have allowed such a feature, but just for the sake of the argument, I'm saying there's other options there. So it's out. As far as the pricing goes, I believe it's going to be hitting dealerships somewhere fourth quarter. I'm interested in seeing what incentives they have for this to lease it. Leasing it might make sense. It might make a lot of sense if you run like Turo or some renting car service and you lease them out and you're in Florida or California or South Carolina, or maybe even Texas and Galveston, San Pedro, Pedro Island, Corpus Christi area, something cool, funky, rent this, have fun. That is where I see most of them probably heading to make money. And the people that really like them and can afford that amount of money, because that's a lot. That ain't anything cheap, especially when you're talking about interest rates and other costs that come associated with buying a car. So I do hope it does well, but man, 60? Come on, dog. Now, continuing on with EVs, Rimac is back in the news. Now, do you know Rimac? They helped build the Bugatti Tourbillon with his V16 and its electric motors tied onto it. They made the Nevera. Now, the Nevera was their take on the electric hypercar. Now, granted, a couple weeks ago, Mr. Rimac himself said that they haven't had great sales because to convince people that can afford $2 million hypercars, most of them are going to buy Pagani's, Koenigseggs, Bugattis, Singers, Gunther Works. They're going to go buy more bespoke vehicles. But that didn't stop him from making a Nevera R. The Nevera R has 2,107 horsepower. 2,107 horsepower. 0 to 60 in 1.74 seconds. Quarter mile in 8 seconds. Yo, who's qualified to drive these cars? I just want to know, honestly, who is qualified to drive a 2,100 horsepower car on the streets that can do 8-second quarter miles? Now, I know for myself, I would love to drive one. I'm not going to say that I can handle an 8-second quarter mile car without having both hands on the wheel as tightly as possible. Now, we saw what happened with Volkswagen. Remember at the Goodwood Festival of Speed Festival? I jacked it up, whatever. You saw what happened with them. They launched off the line with a 2,000 horsepower prototype EV and crashed into bales of hay in 1.74 seconds. The same speed they got to 60. These folks is already crashing, going back to the paddock. Okay, they were done. So imagine this on the road. Now, the difference here is that the R version comes with way more aero, larger rear fixed carbon wings and front splitters, stickier tires, a reworked all-wheel drive system to handle the new power, and save your pennies. Only 40 are being made. each costing 2.5 million. Now, I don't know if prospective owners of these cars have already put their name on the list, but I mean, I don't even know how many people, even if 40 sounds too much. Like, how many people who had a Nevera, which is already absolutely ridiculously fast for an EV hypercar, supercar, who really needs an R version? This had to be like a very small niche of people called him and said, listen, I saw the Tourbillon you made. It has 1,800 horsepower. I ain't feeling that. Please give me another 193 or whatever this has over the Nevera. So if you got 2.5 million and you are really wanting the fastest EV, or this might be one of the fastest hypercars on the entire market. I don't know if the Yesco and the Absolute match that level of speed, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is pretty much at the top of the pile when it comes to that. Now, going on to something that I really want to talk about, certifiably beautiful. Now, you got to look at the screen. If you're not looking at the screen, I want you to go and do your Googles. And I want you to go look up Tuthill, spelled Tuthill, Porsche GT One. And oh my goodness. See, Monterey Car Week happened. And at Monterey Car Week, you have a lot of manufacturers and these bespoke car companies and these coach builders that build these cars that everybody wants to see and they want to release them, like the Nilu 27, which I talked about last week on the podcast. This thing looks like a 911 GT1. So remember from the mid 90s when Porsche was in Le Mans in the race series, they made a 911 GT1 car. If you know what that car is, when you see this, you know exactly what the designer who pinned the Singer ACS car, what he was aiming for when he had this thing on his notepad. This thing looks beautiful. This has reached the very top of my list of, if I hit the Powerball, who am I calling? I would have blew their phone up to be on this list. This thing looks absolutely gorgeous. I don't even know of any other bespoke model I think looks better. And I love a Singer. I love a Gunther Works. And I'm talking about in that Porsche S world. I mean, I love most of them because I just like those cars. But this looks nuts. I mean, this is perfect. The interior, though, some people may not like how it's a little bit more futuristic. I could see people leaning towards Singer being like the interior knock out the park, even though there is somebody that gave him a run for the money at Monterey Car. We're going to talk about that later. But this cream, this orange, the futuristic look with the analog. I mean, this interior looks flawless to me. Now, as far as the engine choices, flat six, either NA at 500 horsepower, or you get a turbo one at 600. I'll be honest, I'd pick an NA one. I need all the visceral analog experience. Dual clutch or 7-speed manual, you already know what I'd pick. 7-speed manual, do not play yourself. You get what is details in the engine and stuff like that. They haven't given, I would expect high red lines, 9,000, maybe more. Who knows? Everything now is at 10, 11,000. I mean, that's just how crazy it's gotten. They haven't talked about the price, though. You would have to ask, is there's only 22 being made. So if they're only making, if Nevera R made 40 at 2.5 million, they're only making 22 of these ridiculous looking 911 GT1, paying homage to one of the greatest design Porsches. This is starting in the high seven figures, guaranteed. I mean, you're not calling them, but I love it. Now, the cool story about this car was leaked online when it was unloaded from an aircraft carrier at the LAX airport, and somebody snapped a shot. And I was on Instagram like, whatever this is, they knocked it well out the park. Okay, sign me up. Now, continuing on. Some other Monterey car news, releases and updates. Maserati threw their hat into the Porsche GT3 track street ready focus type of car with the MC20 GT2 Stradale. Okay, so the MC20 is a supercar that Maserati made. I love it. I think it looks really cool. My son has had the privilege of sitting inside of one. I've seen them at Cars and Coffee in Houston. They are dope supercars, not common, which is why I do like it. It's kind of like it's kind of one of those things where you need to either know about it, research about it. Everybody knows Porsches and GT3s and Ferrari 296s and SF90s, Stradales and things like that. But the MC20, I think, kind of flies under the radar until it shows up and people are like, what is that? That looks amazing. So the difference here is that it's 132 pounds lighter, which is not insignificant in a car that already wasn't that heavy to begin with. It has more extreme aero, a new rear fixed wing that's manually adjustable, and a front spoiler, which together at 174 miles an hour produce 1,102 pounds of downforce in their high drag mode. The performance pack that also comes with this car includes a suspension that was made after the GT2 race car. Now, I don't know if that means this thing is a brick on the street, but it's still a street car. So even though they say it's based after the GT2 race car, I think they still tried to, I would imagine, tweak it a little to be livable on the street. You get a performance pack that includes semi-slick Michelin tires. You get unique tune to the rear diff. You get a performance plus pack if you want to get 4-point harnesses, a fire extinguisher, which is funny, a Corsa Evo drive mode. Includes 4 levels of changing of the traction, ABS, and stability control, and the limited slip differential. And inside the cabin, you get carbon race buckets that look dope with the blue stitching that you'll see in the picture, a shift light embedded into the carbon steering wheel at the top, and a price point that they have not announced. But the regular MC20 costs $240,000. So think of the GT3. This is going to be over 300,000, or if it's not going to be at 300,000, it's a lot of car. So a lot of car for the few people that have an MC20, but I do think this looks dope. And if I was in that market of trying to be different, considering that the Stradale versions of Ferrari, because Maserati and Ferrari have some partnership and lineage, this is a bargain because an SF90 Stradale is like $500,000, if not $1 million. So there you go. Now getting back to Porsche. Well, not really Porsche. We're going to go to Roof, RUF. Roof, rough. It's Roof. They made a concept car years ago called the Rodeo. Now, if you know Porsche, they have the 911 Dakar, which is a dope concept, like an off-road based off the Dakar, desert rally race. It's lifted, it has higher ground clearance. I've seen a few out on the street in Houston. They got roof racks. You can put cherry cans up there. You can put luggage up there. To me, it's a really dope, like, cross-country runner. Like, if you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast, if you're going from the, South to the Northeast, to the mid, to the Pacific Northwest, I think those cars are really dope because you really ain't got to worry about the road. Like if you're in a GT3, at some point you're like, man, I really hope that these roads going where I'm going can handle what I'm doing. But in a car like that, you can handle whatever you need. They took that concept to another level. I didn't think it was possible. This thing looks so fire to me, right? Because it's just like, I'll give you an example. The ground clearance is 9.5 inches. That is the same as a Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. You see the picture. This thing is lifted, big boxy fenders. It looks like a truck, actually. From the fenders, it looks like. You get this, crazy carbon fiber body around it. And it's all their own design. They have proprietary monocoque carbon fiber design they made with integrated roll cages, which is why roof cars are not considered Porsche 911s, even though they look like it. I'm not going to go down the history of Roof. You need to go look it up. They have been in the history books. They've had some of the craziest cars ever produced, okay? Before Singer, before Gunther Works. This was the people. So this has 610 turbo, 3.6 liter flat six, 516 foot-pounds of torque, 6-speed manual. And that is where the Dakar does not have those little intangible points because that's a dual clutch transmission in that one, but still good. A fully adjustable all-wheel drive system. So the Dakar has an all-wheel drive system that has some adjustability to where it sends the torque. This one, you can send torque wherever you want. Front, rears, 100, 70, 30, 10, 90. It doesn't matter. I can send the torque wherever I want. Plus, I have much higher ground clearance. You have much meatier 235 section Goodyear. It's a Goodyear all-terrains. It's some all-terrain tires that I believe are Goodyears. You got Goodyear all-terrain tires. You got quadruple exhaust tips in the rear. Some people may not like the design. I think it matches the butchness of the car design with the fenders, the boxiness. Dope. Okay. You have 155 mile an hour top speed, which doesn't sound a lot. People are gonna be like, yo, BMWs do that. But if you see how lifted this thing is, That's a lot in a car that is lifted this high. Carbon ceramic brakes, 6 pistons in the front, 4 pistons in the rear, all around. And then we open the door. And oh boy, this interior, again, it's called the roof rodeo for those listening to the audio. I can't show you the interior. If you listen to the video, you're going to see this picture right above my head. And oh my goodness, this is inspired by Ralph Lauren Ranch, which just by looking at this brown, saddle brown, kind of worn leather, this indigenous American art fabrics stitched in with the analog gauges and the digital center display. Oh my, this is the type of stuff that, see, a friend of mine, he listens to this podcast, friend Elliot. Me and him, these are the type of things like when I see cars and I see stuff like this is a detail. See, most people see this open and be like, I ain't feeling that. I saw this picture. I said, this might be the most fire interior at all of Monterey Car Week, which sounds crazy because there's been some wild car. I just talked about the GT One, but this here, this is like art on wheels. Then you got the outside of it with the large ground clearance and the fenders. If I had the means, this will be on the short list. Okay. I think this car is amazing. I think it looks dope. I think the idea and the concept, I don't know the price. I can tell by who the company is, what it looks like, this interior, the motor, the idea of what it can do. It's going to be a grip, a stack. Green backs are going to be needed by the load. Okay. Now, I think as far as in that realm of, you know, off-road 911s. There's another company years ago that made one as well. I can't remember the name. I do know that Matt Fair from Smoking Tire had one built. I don't know if he still owns it, but he had one. This has been done before, so it's not like a brand new concept. It's just very cool to see it. And this is just like an ultimate bombing around car. Like you ain't got to worry about a train track, a river, you know? It doesn't matter if you're used to it. You ain't got to worry about it. You can get over almost anything inside of this thing and still have the power to pretty much decimate whatever you want. I think it's an awesome concept. If I hit the Powerball, rest assured I'd be calling them up. Now, continuing on to the Monterey Car Week information and news, there was something I got announced that kind of speaks to my JDM import love, and that was Acura. So we already know the Integra Type S is out. I think it's an amazing car. I think it's one of the greatest sport compacts that we have out, next to the GR Corolla, next to the Civic Type R, the Elantra and the Golf R, the WRX. We have very limited cars in this realm, and I think that one is one of the best ones out there. So they announced what they call the Integra Type S HRC prototype. Now, if you look at the car, you know it's a Type S. So prototype is more so the parts they put on it, but I love everything they did. Like I said, it speaks to my aftermarket JDM love of changing things. So no rear seats in this car. Carbon fiber delete, as you can see, that housed tires that you can use for track racing if you go to a track day. Rear large fixed wing carbon wing, front spoiler, bigger 19-inch wheels, changed out brakes. Recaro bucket seats in carbon. Those are clearly podium Recaro seats. I could tell by how they look. I mean, it just looks like an integrated roll cage in the rear. If you see this, you could tell like this definitely looks like a very high level SEMA build, a high level, obviously OEM. So the quality is very top notch, but this just, it just speaks to me in a way of like, if you had the means to just modify Integra Type S however way you wanted with no worry about the price point or the price tag, this is what it would look like. I think it looks fantastic. I think this stuff should be available. Like honestly, rear seat delete sounds crazy in a 4-door, but listen, I maybe one day I might rear seat delete a GR Corolla. Don't be surprised if something like that happens later down the line. But I think the concept looks dope. I think the idea of this for Integra Type S owners and offering these parts available, I think they should, because there's a market for it. It's extreme, but sometimes extreme is part of the game. It's fun. Be extreme. It's easy to kind of just run of the mill, but this is a dope concept. Now, continuing on with that, before we wrap this up, wagons. Now, as you know, I have a love of wagons, hatchbacks. I love sport performance wagons. I haven't ever owned one, but I wish to one day. And the M5 Touring I talked about was coming out, and well, they announced it. There it is. The M5 Touring got announced. Now, I think it looks dope. I think the idea of this is right up my alley. Audi RS6 Avant, M5 Touring, E63 wagon, AMG. I mean, this is right in my alley. Now, the headline of this car, based on the M5, when I talked about it, the M5 weighs a lot, okay? So when the M5 got announced, everybody was shocked and awed about how heavy that thing was, over 5,000 pounds. This one is heavier, okay? 5,530 pounds. It's a beast, okay? Same 4.4 liter twin turbo, electric assisted, 717 horsepower, 738 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60, 3.5 seconds, 25-mile electric range. The same drivetrain as I spoke about in the M5. This is now just in a wagon. But I wanted to talk about my opinion on the weight of this thing because it's kind of a dead horse to beat. I don't think it's bad. I don't even think it's bad in the regular M5 anymore after I thought about what BMW is trying to do. I don't even know of any M5 owners that were truly after the E39 and probably into the E60, maybe the twin turbo V8 one, were actually trying to drive them on the track. Other than the competition version that people would drive on the Autobahn from videos I would see on people on YouTube, I don't know if anybody or hearing about anybody really trying to test these things on the track. So I could see BMW seeing who's buying them, who's really buying them. I don't mean the aftermarket and the used market when we go and buy the cars we wanted for a much cheaper, already depreciated price. I'm talking about the people that are going to BMW and saying, I want this car, I want to lease it, I want to buy it. I would imagine most of them are just driving it as highway cruisers, quiet, at speed, Autobahn runners, like I've said before. So I can see them looking at this and saying, these people aren't asking for lightweight. They're asking for more comfort. They're asking for it to be faster in a straight line. They're asking for it to go longer range. They're asking to be more comfortable. I can see where the weight comes in because in the wagon, all I see when I saw the weight, I said, this thing must drive really, really solid, meaning bumps, cracks in the road, uneven pavement. If I'm driving from Texas to the East Coast, I'm sure I can eat up miles comfortably. Sound system sounding lovely, listening to podcasts, albums, seats comfortable, cooling, probably massaging, kids in the back, everybody comfortable, luggage and stuff in the rear, and we're just flying through the miles. That to me is a very dope concept that I hopefully one day can participate in. So I don't think the M5 being this high of weight is a problem. I look at it like, what do I want this thing to do? It still has 190-mile-an-hour top speed with the M driver's package. 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. They said with the electric motor assisting, this thing has one of the fastest, like 50 to 110-mile-an-hour ranges. That mid-range, that highway passing power, they said it feels absolutely crazy. That is what this is made for. I think that this is not a bad idea and it's not a bad design, even with the weight. I like how it looks, even though I've been hard on BMW with their recent designs because it's been a rough relationship lately. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. The interior, I think the red seats that I see in this picture, this concept, are a little much. I on a contradictory side, because I said last time with the lightsaber LEDs that they got going on, a lot of the stuff looks like a Dave and Buster's arcade. But I could possibly have fun with it and say okay, but I think the red interior would be too bright, especially if you're talking about road trips. You're at night, you got this bright red interior. I'd probably just get black with some stitching, like blue and the red, matching the M logo and the BMW, logo. I would probably do it that way, or a gray interior if it could be like the old school, like Dove gray interior. I would rather do that than this bright red interior. But the idea of this car, I think, is dope. Problem is, it costs $122,000. Listen, I'm gonna have to wait until these things get about 7 years old. Okay, when this thing goes from 122 to like 65, then call me up and I can see if we can get the party started. But I like the idea of this car. I think the M5 wagon is dope. We ain't gonna have too many of these. If they brought the M3 Touring here, I mean, that would be absolutely a wonderful experience. But again, the market for high performance wagon is like minuscule. Okay, so the people that want this already had the money to buy an R6 Avant, so they're just waiting for the BMW one. Now, before I wrap this up, GR Corolla updates, and I've been on a road trip. I've been in the GR Corolla for ample amount of time. I didn't think that I would do a special video, but I might, before I leave from where I'm at now with family's house, I might do a special video explaining what it was like driving the car as far as I have. So, as anybody knows, listen to the podcast, I live in Houston, Texas. I drove from Houston with my two boys in a GR Corolla with luggage and stuff in the back all the way to the Northeast. That is, what is it? 22 hours straight. I broke it up in 2 days, but I've been to GR Corolla with a downpipe, with a mid pipe, with an exhaust, with an intake, with modifications, with a front lip. I've been blasting through the highways and byways of the United States from Texas all the way to the Northeast, and it has been a magnificent drive. I can't complain. That car handled kids, food, cooler, us driving, stopping at gas stations. I got plenty of thumbs up. I got plenty of people trying to race me all in the middle of the night. I'm just cruising at my normal pace. And I got people in M3s and whatnot rolling up on me trying to get the party going. But this entire trip has been a flawless journey. I haven't had issues. I haven't had breakdowns. It hasn't failed me. The power has been great. It handles great. It feels great. The exhaust isn't drony. I haven't been in there being tired out of my mind. I've been comfortable. I'm 6'3". I've been in the car with my seat back. Now I will say I am going to get some seat jackers because that would have helped even more. But in general, my journey here has been a good time. And I got some other mods waiting for me at the house. See, before I left, I had the MST Performance Intake version 2 DOS. That's waiting for me to install, waiting for me to do a video, waiting for me to compare it to the intake that I already have on the car. And I also have other exterior things I want to do. I put some stickers on the car. I have a video showing me put the front lip on, the mud flaps, the rain guards. I did all of this before I left. I crammed this stuff in. And I also have other things coming later. So more is coming. Like I said, the GR Corolla has been a great ownership experience. I intend to be in it for as many miles as possible. And this podcast is going to have some more. We got upcoming episodes. I want to speak about maybe some more about Monterey Car Week, but I'm going to talk about I'm going to be in the edit next year. That's for certain. I'm going to Monterey Car Week next week. You got the SEMA Auto Show coming up next. I'm going to be there. And listen, I'm back with more podcast episodes. Check out the YouTube channel, like and subscribe to it. And as I always say, do as you wish and do as you may. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. Another traveling episode of the podcast. I'll be back to my normal scheduled program by next week. And I'll see y'all around. Peace.